Hey, this is a video for Rob and Elizabeth. This is my wife, Kim.
Hi.
I'm John, and I just want to say I'm a big fan of the show. I discovered it when you did your Dune thoughts, your thoughts on the script, which was really amazing. Then I realized that you did Free Enterprise, a movie that I think I showed that to you when we were first together, which was like 10 plus years ago now. I was like, oh my God, that movie was like a religion for me and my friends because we completely related to everything. Yeah. We even played Star Trek in the car back when I was younger. But this is actually for Elizabeth. I wanted to say that you're doing a really good job.
Yeah!
And Kim knows what it's like to come on camera.
Definitely.
The first time. It's difficult.
It's terrifying. It's not just difficult. It's terrifying to be in a room and to sit and have to look at a camera. And it's just, I don't know, it's just hard to keep eye contact.
Yeah, I think you can see all the people in the camera. And
you feel like
you feel that they're there and they're judging you.
Yes.
And it's terrifying. How did you get over that?
Practice. Just continuously
just
coming in front of the camera, really.
Me forcing Kim to come on the camera.
Yeah, there's that too.
A little bit, for sure. So we definitely know how you feel, but you're doing a really good job. I think it's a lot of fun. I love how you guys sit around drinking wine, talking about movies that Rob has shown you and your experiences with them together. I know Rob in the future is probably going to show you The Naked Lunch, which is I even show that to Kim because it's a weird movie. It's a very strange movie, but I know that you're watching Buckaroo Banzai, and I showed it to Kim.
Yeah.
And I was so nervous. Of all the movies I've ever shown Kim, I thought, is she going to hate it? She's going to hate it because most of the times I recommend that movie, people hate it.
Yeah, it's either love or hate relationship.
With Buckaroo Banzai, right?
Yeah.
So, and you liked it.
I loved it.
I couldn't believe it. I was
10
shocked.
points.
10 points, but I was really, really shocked. But anyways, we're not going to take any more of your time. I just want to come in and say, love the show. Continue it, guys. And we're here to support you, so.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. That was Happy Console Gamer. And he and his lovely wife sent us in a video that will be played tomorrow night on Elizaviews, whining about movies. Tomorrow night's movie is Jean-Jacques Benet's third feature film, Betty Blue. And we will be watching the extended version recently released domestically by Criterion. So, strap yourselves in, ladies and gents, non-binary people, aliens from all over the known universe. It should be fun. Welcome to Robservations episode number 369. Robservations is, of course, the show about something, and I am your viceroy of verisimilitude, your master of fun and wonder, your I could be a dupe, your duke of dope discourse, your sommelier of sci-fi, your Archduke of Banterbury, and your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett, here on a Sunday, trapped at home. But, it's not so bad. I'm catching up on a lot of things. A lot of stuff's going on. And I'm here with you. I'm here with you today on a Sunday, and you're here with me, and we're here with each other. More importantly, this, of course, is the Post-Geek Singularity community, and I am robcasting at you from the Robservatory. And it is a beautiful day. I hear it's supposed to rain later, but who knows? You just never know what's going to happen from one day to the next. It's crazy. I want to thank Happy Console Gamer for sending in that video. As you all know, you can send in, any of you, please send in videos. Put yourself on camera, say something, say hello to the community. I will play them. If you send me videos, I will play them. So that was great. That was really nice of him to say such kind words. And I thank you, Happy Console Gamer. Johnny, that was very, very nice. And you and your lovely wife are my new favorite couple. So that is tremendous. Hope everyone is holding up. What are y'all doing? Having fun, I hope. Well, guess what? So, in my constant quest to find things to share with you, would you be surprised that I found something in the Hollywood Reporter that was put up at 11 o'clock, literally an hour ago, and it was so shocking, I had to share it. I mean, I read this, and I'm like, this is so unbelievable that I had to share it with the Post-Geek Singularity community. I had to share it with you all because your jaw will be just as slack as mine was when I read this. Wow, Ted Sarandos says viewing is up for Netflix amid coronavirus. I mean, can you believe it? Can you believe it? Let's see what old Ted. Here's Ted, the impresario of Netflix. And yeah, let's see. This article is by Lexi Perez. The Netflix chief content officer joined CNN's Brian Stelter on CNN's Reliable Sources Sunday morning, where he also discussed how the coronavirus, COVID-19, has caused a massive disruption for production and why he doesn't see any disruption in the streaming service's output for the next few months. Netflix chief content officer Ted Sarandos joined CNN's... He already said that. Stelter asked Sarandos how coronavirus has ultimately impacted companies such as Netflix and its rivals. It's been a massive disruption, Sarandos said. Every one of our productions around the world are shut down. I believe that's unprecedented in history, and we have a lot of folks who have found themselves suddenly and without notice to be out of work. Sarandos went on to explain while they're figuring out ways to keep productivity up, their main intent is to make sure that people are taking care of their families and worrying about that first. When we were forced to shut down these productions, the first thing we did is make sure that everybody on these sets, everybody on those crews, knew that they were being paid for the next 2 weeks as if they were there. We sent all of our employees at home, so we have all of our employees at home, even in roles that are not necessarily conducive to doing that. So we're trying to keep things business as usual as we can in a time of great uncertainty for some people. We hope this brings them some economic comfort, if not emotional comfort. While it remains unclear how the government plans to aid those workers hit hardest by the novel coronavirus-related work stoppages, several institutions are pledging money to help those most affected in Hollywood, including Netflix. Sarandos announced Friday that Netflix has set up a $100 million relief fund for out-of-work production professionals, including the surplus of cast and crew without jobs. With the safer-at-home order requiring residents in California to remain at home as a means of reducing the spread of the virus, an increase in streaming is all but assured. Sarandos told Stelter that the viewing is up for Netflix, adding the TV ratings were rising as well. We're proud to be a part of that, which is trying to make that stay-at-home experience a little more bearable for folks, a little more enjoyable even, and give some families something to gather around, something for people to talk about, making us feel a little less isolated while we are being physically isolated. Sarandos also says he doesn't foresee any disruption in Netflix content for the next few months, though he warned that the content pipeline could wear thin later in the year if the shutdown drags on. We work pretty far ahead. You know, we deliver all of our shows with all episodes at once, so we're pretty far ahead. So we don't see any disruption in our output over the next few months. You know, maybe later in the year, if this progresses long, you'll start feeling some of that as the physical production is not operating, Sarandos explained. He went on to describe how virtual reading rooms have exemplified how their creative process has been remarkably adaptive. One of our shows, Big Mouth, the other day did their first virtual table read. We had 40 actors and writers with Netflix executives doing a table read of a new episode. So people are being quite adaptive on getting geared up for a time we can go back to work, he told Stelter. As for the situation in Europe, Sarandos explained that Netflix and other video producers are working with European regulators to tune down the bit rate to take some of the stress off of the internet. I've heard as much as 25%. And to make sure it's available for emergencies. Netflix said Thursday that this will reduce its streaming quality in Europe for the next month as the region deals with taxed networks amid the coronavirus pandemic. We obviously are complying with that, and we're going to look to support that. Those requests around the world, if there need be, keep in mind that the visual quality for the consumer will be barely noticeable at the rates that we're talking about in Europe, unless you're a home theater enthusiast like myself. As the world continues to grapple with the coronavirus, the entertainment industry continues to be in flux as a myriad of high-profile TV and film projects have ceased production. Talk shows, both late night and daytime, have also been paused. Meanwhile, following the closure of U.S. theaters, all of the major studios have postponed their theatrical releases, leaving recent releases to be sent to VOD and digital services weeks early, including Paramount's The Lovebirds, which was just acquired by Netflix. The comedy, starring Issa Rae and Kumail Nanjiani, marks the first studio movie that was pulled from a theatrical release that was placed at a non-studio streaming service. Valence Media, the parent company of The Hollywood Reporter, also owns MRC, which produced The Lovebirds. So, I mean, I know You're probably just as shocked as I was to hear this news that Netflix viewing is up. My God, what is the world coming to? Now, first of all, I got to give it up for Netflix to step forward and start a film fund, $100 million fund to pay for production people that are out of work. I mean, literally, while working in Hollywood can be lucrative, working in production is lucrative, but a lot of the people that work in production, they still, while their paychecks might be fairly comfortable, they still need those paychecks. And, not getting paid for a week or 2 or 3 or 4, especially when you're working in TV, well, actually any job really, that's a huge hit. And it's really nice that Netflix, which employs a lot of people, and whatever you think about Netflix, they're making a lot of really interesting stuff. They're keeping a lot of people employed. And the fact that they got out in front of this thing and they're at least trying to set up a fund for workers, I have to give them all the credit in the world, because, what's going to happen if this goes on for 3 and 4 and 5 weeks? Many of the people in this country live paycheck to paycheck, and when there just is no income. Unemployment doesn't cut it, especially if you have a family of mouths to feed. I don't know where we're going to be at. Not a lot of people are talking about that. It's one thing to get a check from the government for $1,200 or 2 checks for $1,000. That doesn't go very far. And if this continues, I don't know where that's going to go. But kudos to Netflix for stepping up and doing that. And a lot of people are availing themselves of Netflix. I know that Elizabeth just watched that episode of restaurants around the world that are being renovated by a team. It's pretty good. I liked it. It was really nicely shot, interesting locations. I forget what the name of it is. Restaurants on the edge of the world. I wanted to say restaurants, the restaurant at the end of the universe, but it's not that. But it's something like that. You probably know what it is. But it's a good show. I like those shows. I'm a fan of them. The shows where a team comes in, they renovate something, and then you get to see the before and the after. There's something inherent. It's immediately compelling, and I do love that. I think that's quite excellent. So good on Netflix. Now, I read something also kind of funny that I thought I would share with you about Netflix as well, because why not? So this article is on CNET, and it was on CNET today, and March 22nd at 4:30 a.m. was this posted. Netflix Watch Party. How to simultaneously stream movies with your friends remotely. The new Google extension for Netflix lets you chat with friends while watching shows and movies apart from each other. I mean, wow. This is kind of cool. I thought, okay, I'll buy into this. The days of going to the movies or having a group outing have temporarily come to a halt now that we're practicing social distancing and self-quarantine due to the novel coronavirus outbreak. But if you're going stir-crazy inside, need a little socializing, a free Google Chrome extension called Netflix Party is at your rescue. The extension lets you and your friends simultaneously stream shows and movies on your desktop. It also allows anyone in the invited group to pause, play, fast forward, and rewind the movies. Well, that could be annoying. So you're always on the same time frame. There's also a side chat bar where you and your friends can discuss what's going on in the movie, much like you would if you were sitting together on the couch or indeed watching this show, as members of the Post-Geek Singularity know right now, which is amazing. We reached out to see how many people can join your party at a time, but Netflix Party didn't immediately respond. Not only can Netflix Party help ease the stress of feeling alone all day, but it'll also be something you can look forward to at the end of the day. Read on for how to download, install, and use the Netflix Party extension to sync your movie watching with your family and friends. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put this article, in case you would like to read it, I will put this in the live chat so you will have the direct link so you'll know exactly how to set up a Netflix watch party with you and your friends. So if I can, where's my cursor? And I will drop this into the live chat. There you go. So, man, Netflix watch parties, was that already in the works? Has that been, I would think wow, those people are forward thinking over there, man. Well, now that I've got my Netflix out of the way, I need to talk about something. I need to talk about today, March 22nd. For those of you who might not know, March 22nd is William Shatner's birthday. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Today is William Shatner's, wait for it, ... William Shatner's 89th birthday. Denny Crane is 89. James Tiberius Kirk is 89 years old. The guy who was flying, I forget his name, who had a nightmare at 20,000 feet, is 89. But he got out in the nick of time. See what I did there? Anyway, a very, very happy birthday to one of my favorite people on the planet Earth, a man who was my hero growing up, a man I actually got to make a movie with, a man who I directed, Mr. William Shatner, going strong at 89. He is a testament to everybody as to a life well lived. The man is incredible, and I think we all owe a debt of gratitude to live in a day and age where a man who proves you can reinvent yourself, you never have to stop reinventing yourself. The man who won 2 Emmy Awards as Denny Crane, both on The Practice and on Boston Legal, a director, a philanthropist, an equestrian, a thespian, and just an all-around amazing dude who's been inspiring people, at least inspiring me, since I was 5 years old. And a very happy birthday to Mr. Bill Shatner. I did do an early Robservations about a story he taught me. I've talked about it before. I won't talk about it again. You'll have to search for it. But he taught me a valuable lesson about directing, which I've told before on the show multiple times, but I'll spare you. But it is amazing that the man is 89. I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. But it is pretty damn impressive, and I do feel very, very privileged to have worked with him. I hope one day. I haven't given up. I still want to make Free Enterprise 2, The Wrath of Shatner. Who knows? Actually, it's just Free Enterprise, The Wrath of Shatner. There would be no 2 in that. We weren't going to call it 2, just Free Enterprise, The Wrath of Shatner. So yeah, there you go. Can you believe it? 89, man. That guy, what a marvel he is. What a marvel he is. Well, anyway, I got some letters, and I'm just going to, you know what? I figured I'd just just get right into these letters. And another letter from my man. Let's see, who is it? Who is it now? Let's see, who are these people? This one comes from Lubna Khan, who wrote the other day as well. Hello again. I've watched your Robservations on Star Trek Picard Episode 9. Not that I'm watching this show, of course, but I do feel your pain. When something you love goes to pot, it's painful and very frustrating. All this talk of synths, however, made me go off and listen to some Alphaville. The music's played by the Madman. You know, Alphaville, I have a lot of Alphaville albums. I'm a huge fan of Alphaville. And no, it's not, people remember Big in Japan, but they did a lot of other albums like Pornography, and there's some great. Alphaville continued to impress me. So I'm going to put this in. Let's put this video in. Here's an Alphaville video for you. So, as for whether or not they will get the Borg cube aloft, of course they will get it aloft. I'm calling it now. To quote that immortal maxim, creatively it made sense to us because we wanted it to happen. Lubna. Well, thank you, Lubna. That's very funny. I enjoy hearing from you, and you're probably damn right about that, whether we wanted to or not. Here is another one. Let's see. Here's another one. I think I haven't read this. Sean Pullen, once again. Sean's been writing some good letters. Sean Pullen says, "Greetings, Rob. Let me start by saying you don't really need to read my letters live on Robservations. It's kind enough that you read them. I think your listeners are flabbergasted and exhausted with fans like me. No, they're not. they'll be exhausted with fans like you when I tell them to be. I love your letters. Who can't seem to accept your dislike of Picard and let it be. I guess, for my own part, I view myself as something of an emissary. I think if I can convince Rob to recognize some of Picard's merits and mitigate some of his rage, any increased receptivity on his part will spread to his audience. Pathetic, I know. Yes, but I appreciate the Herculean effort you're making. You're like Sisyphus. I like that. I've been asking myself why that impulse is so strong in me. I think, for one, it's natural to want people to like what you like and be saddened when people hate what you like. Haha. I've also been way too sensitive about people's feelings. Decades of Next Generation fandom has engendered in me a warmth for Patrick Stewart. So when, after decades, he returns to Picard, my bleeding heart shrinks to imagine a kindly old man's shock and surprise at fan vitriol and rejection. Or I imagine Isa Briones, young and naive, excited and overjoyed at landing her first TV role, a starring role in a mythic franchise with global appeal, and my bleeding heart imagines her checking fan reaction on Twitter or YouTube, where the vast majority of posts are strongly negative and some seethe with anger. Well, let me tell you, my anger does not my anger does not extend to the actors themselves, and I've heard that as Sutra, she picked out her own wardrobe. And I would say, good on you, girl. Good on you. Because I think, frankly, I'm digging her portrayal of Sutra. I'm just not digging the scripts that she's having to perform in. So there's a difference. I think she's great, to be honest. Why should I care? Stewart's experienced, cool, even angry reception before. He's a big boy, and to quote Marina Sirtis, richer than God. Isa Briones is beloved by Hamilton fans, and she's a big girl too. I imagine she's being compensated nicely and that there's fans enough out there affirming her work. Still, it's my nature to imagine a hopeful young girl dashed and disappointed by widespread vitriol and rejection. Again, I know I'm a bleeding heart, and probably a misguided one. Stewart and Briones are fine and maybe even untouched by negative reception. Finally, Trek has been such an integral part of my life. I pine for new Trek. Me too, since 2009. The possibility that CBS should fail and issue another decade of darkness concerns me. You and other YouTubers have argued eloquently about how you'd rather no Trek than new Trek you believe poisons its soul. I have not done that. I just want to say I have not done that because, as many people point out, that there is a 54-year legacy of Star Trek. And if you like Star Trek, maybe you'll delve into the original series, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, the animated series, Enterprise, whatever, and you're going to find something, hopefully, that you'll like there. And the legacy of Star Trek will continue. Look, I don't like every Gundam animated series either. You know, I thought some of them weren't good. But that doesn't mean I would say don't watch Gundam. Just because I've been very, very disappointed in Star Trek since 2009 doesn't mean I'm disappointed in Star Trek as a whole. I mean, my God, Eagle Moss just announced a large version of the Enterprise from All Good Things. I mean, there is still a lot of Star Trek I get excited about. I still have a garage kit, Randy Cooper's shuttlecraft model I would love to build. In my maybe I'll put it out and show you the kit here on Robservations. So there is a lot of Star Trek. I'm still just as excited about Star Trek as I've ever been. I'm just disappointed in the new iterations of Star Trek, which is different. So I don't believe that there should be no Star Trek. And maybe they'll get it right. You know, maybe they'll get it right. And I have to tell you, the new showrunner of Star Trek Picard for next season and the addition of Mark Bernardin gives me hope. I think we have a good team in place to bring us a good season of Picard. I hope so. I hope so. I agree wholeheartedly with your concerns about the tone and nature of Picard's treatment of killing and torture, insidiously undermining an important Trek ethos, the sanctity of life. I want to see that righted, and maybe our current collection of showrunners and writers aren't the ones to do it, which is why they're gone. And remember, we're seeing for Picard next season a very new creative team. and I am looking forward to seeing what they do. Hope springs eternal, my friends. I am the eternal optimist. And just because I've hated the last 10 episodes of Picard doesn't mean I'm not going to like the next 10 episodes of Picard. I will be tuning in and watching, and hopefully it'll be great. And I mean, come on, Whoopi Goldberg coming back? I'll say it again. I do want to see some things righted, but ultimately I want Trek to succeed and continue and believe there's more in new Trek to commend than oppose. I really don't have much to say today about the show itself. Well, maybe I do, so if you're still with me, here we go. I'm not understanding how most everyone seems to be viewing Sutra, and by extension Soji and the other synths, as evil for considering Sutra's plan. Flip the paradigm. If Coppelius's population was the last vestige of humanity in the galaxy, having been hunted to near extinction by synths, and beyond the boundaries of a time and space, an alliance of organics stood ready to rescue and defend, wouldn't you make that call? Sure, the synths could take their chances with Picard and flee on the La Sirena, but what are their chances of eluding the Romulans and their co-conspirators? Which reminds me, you weren't much satisfied with my answer to why Maddox sent Soji to the artifact. You said it didn't answer why he sent Dahj to Earth to go to school. Well, that's my fault. In my endeavor to be expedient, my letters are too long, I omitted part of Maddox's speech. When Picard asks Maddox why he sent Soji to the artifact, Maddox answers, the same reason I sent her sister to Earth, to find the truth about the ban. There are lies upon lies. They're hiding something. When Picard asks who, Maddox replies, I don't know, the same ones who are hunting her. Picard asks the Romulans, and Maddox continues, not just them, I think the Federation are involved. That's what I sent them to find. This is further alluded to by Laris when she first describes the Zhat Vash. At the heart of the Zhat Vash's mission is a deep, unassailable loathing. It's said they operate without regard for treaty or jurisdiction, and not just in Romulan worlds, but in the Klingon Empire, the Gorn hegemony, and the Federation itself. So Dahj was sent to infiltrate the Daystrom Institute to gather intel on the synth's malfunction, and Soji to the artifact to uncover Romulan plots. All right, then why did they have to be activated? I mean, the whole thing about, as we saw from the very opening of Picard in the first episode, the Zhat Vash soldiers were worried that Dahj and Soji had to be activated. How did they know that? How did the Zhat Vash know that they had to be activated? And if Maddox was sending Dahj and Soji to uncover information, if they didn't know who they were, if they were obviously, they have the AI mother that they're reporting into, there's a whole cover story. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they're doing. It would have been kind of cool if they were undercover under their own, I don't know, they're under their own power. I still don't understand why they had to be activated. So they didn't know who they were. Who was going to activate them? Was Maddox going to activate them? And when were they going to be activated? And if they didn't know who they were, and they were under the impression that they had a mother and a father, and they grew up, and why were they given memories of a childhood that never was? It seems to me that a lot of this show, part of the problem was you shifted showrunners in the middle of production, and a lot of it doesn't make sense. If you go back and you watch a lot of the early episodes, they don't really jibe. I think Elnor was a vestige of the previous showrunner, whether it's Kurtzman, and they didn't really know what to do with him. I mean, his storyline, literally Picard left him behind. And you ask yourself, why was that character introduced? Why did they even go get him? If Picard didn't want him by his side the whole time, if they weren't supposed to develop a father-son bond, and instead, let's make Soji the father-son or father-daughter bond. None of it hangs together, man. It doesn't. If you look at it, you can use a line of dialogue here and there, but the first rule of screenwriting is to show, not tell. And the problem is, a lot of what they say in these one-sentence throwaways or two-sentence throwaways are not paid off by what we see as the plot unfurls. I think this detail answers a few of your concerns. You're puzzled about why the Romulans didn't broadcast the admonition to the galaxy. The answer is twofold. One, Romulans are secretive and mistrustful. Rather than inform, they infiltrated. Shaban said as much. Listen, I know how much you despise Shaban's answers, but that fits Romulan culture to me. The other reason is that Romulans did not want to risk any society of advanced synths hearing the admonition. As Sutra implied, what's a warning to organics is a promise to synths. Okay, that might be true, but these things are not being dealt with in the story. They're just not. I mean, it seems to me, where does the Zat Vash go from being this clandestine organization to showing up with a armada of over 200 Romulan warbirds? How does that all work? Where's the Romulan government? How come they have 200 warbirds? If they've got 200 warbirds, like I pointed out, why is there any refugees on any planet? Why aren't they all in the employ of the Zat Vash? Is there enough Zat Vash soldiers to command or to be on and to man these 200 warbirds? You're talking thousands and thousands of people. Where do they come from? I watch these things and you've got these certain lines of dialogue. None of it jibes because we've seen synthetic life forms. Why have they not seemed to be very interested in Data? It's not like Data wasn't going around the spaceways. And this whole idea about synths, again, what is a synth? How have they defined synths? I don't know. I don't even know the difference between Sutra and Soji and Daj. I mean, maybe they're more advanced. How so? I mean, the data androids like Maddox. Oh, Maddox made the short bus synths. Well, why would you? I mean, hadn't technology advanced to the point? And there has been synthetic life in Star Trek before. Are we only talking about humanoid synthetic life? People that look like people? We've met other synthetic life forms like the exocomps, as people always point out, in Next Generation. There has been synthetic life in Star Trek before. All of this, unfortunately for me, seems a little, I don't know. I mean, the old ones had android bodies, all the way back to what are little girls made of? What does a synth define it for me? I need to know what it is. And they haven't told us. Apparently, it's humanoid robots who look like people, look like human beings? I mean, why is that? Why do synths only look human? As we saw in Offspring, Lal got to pick what she wanted to look like. It's very odd. And I get it. But what you're doing is you're blanketly buying into all of these concepts that I feel you've got to do world building. All of these elements need to have world building behind them to understand they are using a genre shorthand that has been established in other television shows and movies, and they just figure they don't have to explain. You have to explain what Star Trek's version of a synth is. You can't just rely on the cultural memory, the pop culture memory of a synth, whatever that may be. You've got to explain it to us. But what I love most about Episode 9 is its expansion of a preeminent Star Trek theme. In so many Star Trek episodes and iterations, we see cultures who encounter the Federation with mistrust. The Federation is constantly extending its hand, extending olive branches, saying, "You can trust us, we come in peace." Some cultures accept, many mistrust. The admonition's warning condemns all organic life as destined to enslave and destroy synthetic. This echoes the Founders' mistrust of solids depicted in Deep Space Nine. The Founders believed solids are destined to mistrust, enslave, and destroy shapeshifters. The Federation's claim otherwise fell on deaf ears. It's such a powerful Trek theme. Yeah, that we already saw in Deep Space Nine. It led to a galactic conflict. Can we trust people so different from ourselves? In mistrust, the Founders sought to control organics. These synths seem bent on annihilation. Are they? Once again, we have a Starfleet captain or a retired admiral saying, "No, we're different. You can trust us." It makes Star Trek Picard's depiction of a Starfleet wavering in its core principles all the more poignant. What happens when the Federation compromises, when it subjugates a minority and turns its back on refugees? The synths started out as a relatively powerless extreme minority. Now a galaxy-spanning alliance threatens to wipe out a Federation that can no longer say we're different. I find the whole situation fascinating. How can our hero get us out of this? Anyway, do you have an address which I can send the aforementioned whiskey? Cheers to you, Rob. Thanks for keeping the dialogue open. Okay, here's the thing. Again, to answer this, first of all, there was no problem with synths, apparently, until the Romulans hacked them and attacked Mars. I would have thought that there would have been some kind of fact-finding mission, like, how did this happen? We just know that there was a synth uprising. Did they just accept that's what happened? That seems a little odd. Where was Bruce Maddox saying this could not have happened? And him going in going, you know what? These people were hacked. Honestly, I didn't believe the synth uprising because we don't have enough. We don't know. Were synths only on Mars, or were they all throughout Federation space? Were there synths on every planet? And if the synths on every planet didn't have an uprising, that would have meant that only the synths on Mars had an uprising, which would have led one to believe that synths everywhere were clearly not at fault. It was only the Martian synths that were, or something. The problem is, it's, as I've always said, it's cutscene storytelling. It's video game storytelling. And indeed, it's Mass Effect 3 storytelling. And that's what I object to. And I think I have to know. I have to understand. And I think ultimately my real problem with all of this is it's not about Picard. The show is not about Jean-Luc Picard. And at the end, if he gives a great speech and somehow stops, why would a galaxy-spanning group of synths that apparently leave admonitions in various galaxies? I don't know. Are they going to show up and exterminate all organic life? Even that doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense because clearly if synths can go start their own colony somewhere, and I don't even understand why the synths themselves, if they're that advanced like Data, didn't prove to the galaxy that they were hacked by the Romulans. Couldn't that group, couldn't Maddox, couldn't Alton, Inyago, Sung figure any of that out? None of this makes any sense to me. And I'm sorry, I just am never going to buy into it. And I appreciate those people that can, but it's been sloppy and it's been all over the place. But as long as we can keep talking about it, I'll keep talking about it, which is great. And I love that. So, yeah. But, don't think that I'm going to stop. Hi, Rob. Hail the Imagined Connoisseur King. This comes from Omar94. Again, with everything happening with the Star Wars movies, what do you think will happen next? Personally, I'm not interested anymore. We've had too many problems with the behind-the-scenes drama and creative talent coming and going. I feel the IP should just be put on hold for an extended period of time. Then, in the future, if there's interest wanting to see Star Wars return, you might as well just reboot it from the beginning. Starting fresh seems like the only thing to do that will reinvigorate the franchise. That will also make it accessible for everyone when the movies come, as starting from scratch will let everyone go in fresh. Thanks, and live long and prosper. See, I look at it this way, and I really believe this. Every episode of a TV show and every movie that you see is a fresh start. I never think to myself, well, I didn't like the last James Bond movie, so I'm just going to give up on the new James Bond movie. I don't think that way. I think every episode is another chance to get it right. Just like every day is another chance to change your life. If you're going to be like, well, I didn't change my life yesterday, so I can't change my life today. I don't believe in that. So that's why I go in eyes wide and I get excited. This girl I used to date, she used to give me shit for that. She used to say, like, why, not every James Bond movie is so good, and yet you get excited for each and every one. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I've seen enough James Bond movies to know that the quality of the franchise is definitely hit or miss, up or down. But for me, it's not either. I don't just love something or hate something. There's joys that I can take out of there are scenes that, like, I don't like A View to a Kill. I don't like it. I think it might be my least favorite James Bond movie because it had such potential and it disappoints me. But there's still things in it that I like. You know, I'll watch it, and in that case, I'll watch any James Bond movie, even a bad James Bond movie, because the entire franchise overall I find interesting. Now, when it comes to Picard, what they've done for me is every episode has done things to undermine my interest. And there hasn't been, to me, one good episode. Look, I'm not saying that I loved seeing Deanna Troi and I loved seeing Riker again, and they were great. But I thought what was happening there, the fact that they introduced Deanna Troi and Riker with a dead kid. Like, did you have to do that? I mean, really? And they did that to somehow tie it all back into the synth ban, and they did it in an unbelievable, stupid way. He has a silicon-based virus. Well, how does that work? How does a silicon-based virus invade a carbon-based life form? See, these are the things that I'm like, you can't, it bums me out. It bums me out when that happens. But I mean, I tend to like things. I want to like things. I mean, if I criticize something, that doesn't mean I don't, if the next day there's going to be another something, I'll be excited for it. I'll be like, okay, maybe this is going to be good. And when it comes to Star Wars, people really like The Mandalorian. And while I felt The Mandalorian was very hit and miss, but there was enough in it that I enjoyed watching it enough that I would watch more. And I still love the Star Wars universe. You know, I mean, I still dip into it, whether it's comics, whether it's novels, watching the original films. There are things I like. I mean, I'll even go and say, the more I like Rogue One to me is not perfect. Obviously, that film had production problems as well. But, you know, I think the movie's a pretty good movie. And it has a great space battle at the end. So Rogue One always interests me. I like the characters. I like the actors. You know, I like seeing everything in Rogue One. And that's a new Star Wars movie, and I don't want to live in a world where there's no Rogue One. And I think that the Star Wars franchise, it's such a rich franchise. What Star Wars needs is what Star Trek needs, is what every franchise needs. It needs deft creators that are excited about the property, that understand the legacy of these properties, and they don't want to come in and reinvent these properties to be timely. Look, once you're trying to keep up with the times, once you're trying to make something right now that feels of today, you've already dated what you're doing. That's, I think, look, whether that New Warriors with Safe Space and Snowflake was a good idea or not, those terms are already dated. And so, as ridiculous as those characters are, it's so on the nose, and you're going to look back in 5 years and go, what was I thinking? The great thing about these franchises is, sure, you can go back and look at the original series, and if you want to focus on the production design and you want to focus on the special effects, that's fine. But they were made in 1966 to 69, so you've got to take that into consideration. And where was culture at? So it's kind of like when you're playing golf. For those of you who don't know, when you're playing golf, there's something well, first of all, there's par for the course, where each hole is given a par, which means how many shots should you be able to sink. If you're a great golfer, how many shots should you be able to make can you get the ball into the cup? And let's say par for the course is 3 or 4. So you get 4 strokes to get your ball into the cup. Well, so whatever par is for a course with 18 holes, let's say it's like 72, okay? That's if you're a really good golfer. And if you can make that course, you can complete that course, and you can do it at 72, you're what's called a scratch golfer. You can shoot par for a course. Most people can't. You got to be a really good golfer. So let's say your average score when you're playing on a 72 course is, say, 92. That means you have a 20 handicap. So I think at least, growing up in a house of golfers, I tend to give a handicap score to various things. So if I go back and I watch an episode of television or a movie that was made at a certain time period, I not that the movie's this is not a handicap meaning like I'm handicapped. It's not like that. It's a handicap meaning that you've got to take into consideration certain factors. And in the case of movies and television, you've got to take into account when these movies were made. Like, you can't watch a movie from the 40s or 50s and 60s and expect it to engage you exactly the way a movie from the 90s, the aughts, or the 2000 teens would. You just have to take that into consideration. You have to take the time it was made, the era in which it was made. You have to take all those things into consideration, and I definitely do. Pacing was different. Things are different. Now, that's just something, I don't know why, it was ingrained in me in an early age. I've often said one of the things about growing up as a kid in the 70s and the 80s, especially in the 70s when I was younger, when you would come home from school or when I'd go to school in the morning, they would show Our Gang shorts, Spanky, Alfalfa, Buckwheat. They would show Darla. They would show those shorts. They were made in the 1930s. And I enjoyed them. I'd watch them before I'd go to school, say junior high or whatever, elementary school, junior high. And then when you come home from school, they would have sitcoms like Leave It to Beaver, I Dream of Jeannie, Gilligan's Island, The Brady Bunch, Partridge Family. So you could watch sitcoms from the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s in a 3-hour block after school, which meant in one day, I was watching American pop culture from the 30s, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. So I just grew up watching 40 years of American pop culture and taking it all in. I didn't sit there and go, I'm not going to watch Our Gang shorts this morning because they're black and white. I mean, I love The Twilight Zone. So growing up, and I was watching Bond films. When you're watching Bond films, when I started to watch Bond films, I was already seeing Bond films that were almost 20 years old. Twilight Zone started out in 1959. That was something that I really liked. So as I was growing up, I didn't make distinctions about when movies were made or when they all came out. It was all part of the same thing. I liked Our Gang shorts. I liked I Dream of Jeannie. I mean, it was about an astronaut who had a genie. It was like, come on, who doesn't like that? I liked Gilligan's Island. It was funny. I liked Leave It to Beaver. I liked My Three Sons. I liked the Andy Griffith Show. It was all of these things that you would watch. I thought they were all cool. Nowadays, I think people, because there's so much content already out there, and obviously there's a lot more to watch. I mean, back then we had basically 5 channels to watch. There wasn't even cable yet. So I was used to seeing all kinds of different things and I like them in different ways. And Star Wars is not going away anytime soon. I think the mistake that they made, and the mistake that Disney made, is Disney bought Star Wars for $4 billion. They had to justify that. And let's remember, with Hollywood logic, you have to make 3 times what you spend to break even. So the break even for Disney on Star Wars was $12 billion. $12 billion. That's a huge nut to have to cover. Is Star Wars there yet? Probably not. So they had to make sure, from a corporate point of view, whatever corporations do, whatever research they do, they had to follow the corporate mandate. Unfortunately, they didn't have a choice. They took a big risk, so they weren't exactly able to. I mean, I get it. The reason that you can't make a 65-year-old, you can't have 65 to 75-year-old groups of characters at Disney lead the charge of new Star Wars. We as fans would have. Disney probably, if they reconsidered, they might do something different. But corporations, it does not compute. And this is one of the biggest problems that corporations have when they're creating entertainment. When you've got overseers to these franchises making those calls. Because conventional wisdom, by any metric or any stretch of the imagination, they would tell you, we have to appeal to the younger audiences today. We can't appeal to the older audiences. We just can't. We need new younger people. We need new young audiences. That's never going to change. So what are you left with? You have to do what they say, because the fan bases, none of that plays into conventional wisdom, and corporations can only go by conventional wisdom. If you have a maverick leading the way, then maybe you could have a maverick make that decision, but it's never going to happen in the corporate world. So anyway, I think Star Wars is going to be just fine. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing more Star Wars. I really am. I know people have been sending in some chats. Let's check out where we are at there. You know what? I'm going to have to put on my glasses because this is smaller. Let's see. Willow sent in a tip and said, I'm about halfway through the final season of Next Generation. While there weren't any great episodes thus far, there wasn't anything truly awful prior to Sub Rosa. Sub Rosa, wow, one of the most inexplicably... You know what's funny about Sub Rosa? It's like a weird gothic romance. I will say this about Sub Rosa. When we were doing the Blu-rays, we were going to do a whole feature on that, maybe have commentary on that episode, but we didn't. But it is a beautifully shot episode. And when I was watching, as the Blu-rays, as the new high-definition versions of the episodes would come in, I did find Sub Rosa to be of some value only because it looked so good. Willow goes on and says, Beverly, I did fall asleep reading a particularly erotic chapter in my grandmother's journal. As much as I love the idea of a 100-year-old woman getting busy with a 30-year-old man, who the fuck gets aroused from reading about their grandmother's sexcapades? Come on, Willow. I think everybody can get aroused at everything. You should know that. So, yes, I think that is okay. It's okay. But yes, I have to say that it is true, ladies and gentlemen. Sub Rosa is not a great episode of Star Trek, but I do marvel that it got made. Mark C sends in a super chat and says, R.I.P. Kenny Rogers. Yes, Kenny Rogers passed away, I believe, yesterday. He was 81 years old. He lived a good life. And he left, again, another person who lived a great life and left us a great legacy of work. And Kenny Rogers roasters, too. So, yes, we should all remember Kenny Rogers, another life well lived. And I can't, while I'm sad people pass away, people that I've grown up with, or if I've grown up with their work, but I can't, I remember my Nana Babe. That was what her name was. Her name was Cecilia, but all I ever knew her was Nana Babe, and she was my dad's mom, my grandmother. But we never called her grandma. She was Nana Babe, and I loved her. I mean, she smoked, and she had this perfume on, and one of my favorite scents. She didn't smoke like a chimney, but she smoked. She was of that era. And one of my favorite scents in the world was the combination of perfume and cigarette smoke that her apartment smelled. And I know people are going to be like, ugh, gross. It wasn't gross. It was the way my grandmother smelled, and I loved it. There was something comforting about that. And there was also the vague scent of whatever cookies she'd been recently baking, and I love that. And my grandmother died at 83 she actually died soon after Return of the Jedi came out in 1983. And she was 83, and she died in 83. And I remember it was so funny because a few weeks leading up to her death, she was hilarious. She always had a smile on her face. She was always laughing. And she had gone on like a cruise or something. And I remember she came over to our house, and she was complaining about her friends. And she's like, all these ladies, they're always bitching. They're always complaining. They're always talking about their aches and their pains. And she's like, what do they expect? We're old. We're old. I mean, why complain? We're here, aren't we? And she was very funny. She was a very funny lady like that. And she died after a short illness. She actually passed away of pneumonia. And I remember thinking I was very sad that I would never see her again. But she lived a great life. She had a smile on her face the whole time, and she drove up until very very soon before she passed away, and I couldn't be upset about her passing because everything about her just made me smile, and I was indeed sad that I wouldn't see her again, but she didn't suffer, and she led a very active life up until literally just a few weeks before she died. And that's just life. And I remember feeling, I was sad that I would never see her again, but in a way I was sort of content that she didn't suffer and that she was having a good time. Now, I don't know how Kenny Rogers went out, but I'd like to think that, man, what a life he led. and he led a life where the indelible marks. I mean, the gambler, all those things, and it's good life. That's the way we should live. Word Balloon, John Suntress from the Word Balloon podcast, and everybody should listen to the Word Balloon podcast. If you don't, especially in this day and age, comic creators more than ever need to be heard and get the voice out there. So check out John Suntress's Word Balloon podcast because it's great. The Word Balloon, John says, the Short Bus Synths is a movie that must be made. Yeah, I mean, I don't understand, even if Bruce Maddox was doing research from data, why were there short bus synths? I don't know. I don't get it. I know that he went away to continue his research. I mean, we already had data. So you'd think that if Bruce Maddox was building positronic brains and all of this, that we would at least get before. I don't know. Anthony Gonzalez sends in a tip and says, as for Mark Bernardin, after his Twitter rant about the way they treated Walter Mosley, I was a little surprised he took a job there. Aside from that, I'm glad he's there. Well, Mark Bernardin, who frequently does podcasts with Kevin Smith, is a great guy. And let me tell you, when you get a job on something like Star Trek Picard, do you think that even I would turn down a job there? Not that they would ever hire me, but if I was given a job, of course, you take the job and you see if you can add to the legacy, and you don't not take a job in Hollywood. But you would try and sit down and I would hope that they would hire me. If they hired me, they'd want to hear my points of view. I would have no problem going, hey, let's do better. I have to tell you, the Hills Run Red that I've been working on now, the reason that we were able to get the Hills Run Red is when the guys over at Media Blasters came and to us, and Carl Morano and John Carcietta, they came to me with the specific mandate. They said, look, we have made a couple of $350,000 movies and we want them to be better. And we're coming to you to make them better. That's straight up. That's what they told us. That's what they told me. And I was really flattered because they liked free enterprise. And okay. And I guess they'd known and we did that. I think we did that. And while the movie was compromised by the studio, I'm still very proud of the Hills Run Red for what it is. And I think that there's the problem now is in Hollywood, once you get these kinds of jobs, they're very lucrative and people want to hold on to them. What Star Trek needs, and it has not had that because you've seen the rotating showrunners, you need a strong showrunner that knows what they're doing. And I think their new showrunner might be the guy to do it. Obviously, a person like, Mark Bernardin, I didn't mean to do that. Mark Bernardin was, in fact, hired. So perhaps the new showrunner is going to be that guy, which I think is great. Sorry, I have to get back to the chat window here. And I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So, yeah. Jason S. sent in a tip and said, do you know why Disney is releasing the older Star Wars on 4K? Lucas didn't have them scanned at 4K resolution, and some of the prequels, I believe, were 1080p, though I'm glad Harmy can use them for his despecialized as they have better color correction. I do think that the original Star Wars was, in fact, remastered at 4K a couple years ago. Bill Hunt did an article about that, so I do think that they were, in fact. I'm not positive about that. But remember, a lot of movies, they were not finished in 4K anyway. They might have been shot on film. They're finished in 2K and they're up-reses. So, we'll see. But yes, Harmy, people will jump in and get better color correction. And look, the original Star Wars does look, the special edition does look better on Disney than it has in the past. The Blu-rays were obviously not great, so I think these new versions are definitely better than what we've had, so I'll support them. 200 Watt Studio sent in a super chat saying, Star Wars faltered where Cobra Kai succeeded because they melded both worlds of the new and the old perfectly. They respect the old audience as well as the young. Look, I agree with you. I think Cobra Kai, like Creed, is a great example of how things are done correctly. And again, Cobra Kai is something that the creators, the people that made Cobra Kai, pushed it into existence, and they like made it happen. That's what you like. That's what you need, and you need people that want to do those things. I mean, I wish it would have been more interesting if some really dedicated creators, a filmmaker, maybe a David Fincher or something, went to George Lucas and said, "Hey, I've really got this idea of what to do with Star Wars. I really want to make it." And then Star Wars was then bought by Disney, and the creative direction that David Fincher would have been going in was adopted, and that's where they went. But again, when Disney bought Star Wars, they had mandates. They had things that they knew that from a corporate standpoint they needed to happen. At least that's what they thought they needed, and they had to follow that. They had to do that. And I think that's the problem. You know, everybody blames Kathleen Kennedy. And I think Kathleen Kennedy, if I am a big fan of hers, I've talked about her a lot, and I think Kathleen Kennedy has to respect what Disney wants from the movies. I think if all they cared about was just the movies, making the movies good, they would do different things. They would move forward differently than they have. But you've got what Disney corporate wants, and then you're trying to fit all of those things together. You know, you hire a J.J. Abrams. Yes, J.J. Abrams, he's well liked around town. I don't necessarily think. I certainly wouldn't have hired him for Star Wars based on the 2 Star Trek movies he'd made. Because he's just copying things that have been done before. I would much prefer an original filmmaker have brought an original vision, an auteurist vision to the franchise. But, you know, what can I do? What can I do? But I think Star Wars, it's going to be around for a while. And it'll work out. This letter is a letter from Nikolai Powell. Nikolai says, "Hi Rob, I found your channel only a week ago when Gary on Nerdrotic mentioned you. I was working my way back through your videos while gaming. You are great company, and I couldn't agree more with you on Picard. So you invited us listeners to send us what we wrote. So far, I've written 3 books, and with every chapter, I felt myself improve. Book 3 sucked so little, I'm not ashamed to show it to people. Link below. Book 4 through 6 I abandoned after 10 to 35,000 words because I felt with every chapter I was getting worse and worse. I live with live streaming here in France. I decided to pick up working on my latest book again. I study physics and biology. Oh, while live standing, I guess you're stuck at home in France. I decided to pick up working on my latest book again. I study physics and biology for a Bachelor of Education, and I've always enjoyed it since I've always enjoyed science fiction and fantasy. I enjoy your streams. Keep safe in these interesting times." And he did send me a link to his work, which I will check out. I would put it in the live chat, but he didn't say that I could. So, Nikolai, if you want me to share this with the rest of the Post-Geek Singularity, I will. But I won't do it until I hear back from you. Stubble McShave sends in a letter, and Stubble says, "Hi, Rob and the Post-Geek Singularity. In these times when you're shutting doors, there's been a lot of suggestions for movies and TV series to watch. I thought that I would add to the mix what I rewatched yesterday. I'm talking about a production between America and Japan, which was done in the 1980s. By now, I think some of you have guessed what it is. I am, of course, talking about the miniseries Shogun. This series is based on the book by James Clavell, and he was also executive producer on the miniseries." Whoa, Stubble, let me just back right up, son. Let me stop right there and just say Shogun is one of my favorite things that has ever been put on TV. I love Shogun. It's one of the great miniseries of all time. I can't recommend it highly enough. I have it on Blu-ray. I love Shogun so much that every September 15th, I declare Talk Like Yoko Shimada Day. And I'll just leave that up for everybody to decide. I love Shogun. And yes, it is based on the book by James Clavell. The miniseries is loosely based on the life of English navigator William Adams, who traveled to Japan in the early 17th century and rose to a high rank in the service of the Shogun. In the miniseries, we follow a fictional character named John Blackthorne. In the miniseries, we get to see feudal Japan of the early 17th century from John Blackthorne's point of view. He starts off by thinking these people are barbaric, but comes to respect their way of life and strong sense of honor. I think it's the best example of someone being thrust into another culture, which he doesn't understand and slowly comes to accept and admire. A close second of this is Kevin Costner's Dances with Wolves, that surely took some inspiration from the miniseries in that respect, or the novel. I won't get into any of the plot, but I think I should mention some of the cast. The main character, John Blackthorne, is played by Richard Chamberlain, and he does a fantastic job. He's fantastic. It's also an early role for John Rhys-Davies, that some may know as Gimli in Lord of the Rings, Inglés. He plays the Portuguese pilot Vasco Rodriguez, who has a complicated relationship to Blackthorne since he has respect for him, although they should be enemies. John Rhys-Davies gives a stellar performance in the series. When I met John Rhys-Davies, when I interviewed him for Gimli, for the Fellowship of the Ring extended edition special features, I told him how much I loved Shogun and how I thought how great he was in it. And I kept saying Inglés. He thought that was hilarious, that I was so into that. One of the most intriguing and captivating women ever on the screen is Yoko Shimada. Goddamn right. That's why every September 15th is Talk Like Yoko Shimada Day, and I mean that with all respect, who played Lady Toda Mariko. Her relationship with Blackthorne is captivating since she clearly has feelings for him, but she's already married to a powerful individual in Japanese society, Lord Buntaro. She can't show any feelings for Blackthorne in this patriarchal society that has a very strong tradition of honor. Finally, the performance that Toshiro Mifune gives as Lord Toranaga is extraordinary. Yes, it is. The way he presents himself makes his incredibly charismatic and intimidating manner. He was the perfect actor to play a character with that kind of authority. There are several other great performances, mainly by the Japanese cast, but there are 4 characters that always stand out in my mind when I think of this miniseries. For a long time, I wanted a remake of this, but I don't know if you could capture the magic of this in a remake. I would, however, surely like to see a new series of this quality. I don't know how well this plays with the younger generation. I first watched it when I was around 10 the first time, and I didn't really connect with it then. When I watched it in my mid-teens, I really connected with it, and I thought Mariko is the hottest woman ever on screen. She is. It's her character. It's like Grace Kelly in Rear Window. You can't not love her because of the character she plays. I also absolutely love John Rhys-Davies in this. I mean, with his delivery of lines like, "Listen to me, you whore-gutted, pock-marked, motherless scum. I need a favor." What's not to like? If people haven't seen this miniseries or it was a long time since they watched it, I would recommend that you pop this into your Blu-ray player or find it where it's streaming and give it a go. So, Rob, what do you think of this miniseries? And is there anything you'd like to add? Stubble, brah. It's one of my favorite things that's ever been broadcast, ever. I love Shogun. It was so great to get it on DVD, Blu-ray, and I had it on DVD too. I love this miniseries. What's really interesting is when I got the Blu-ray, I went back and watched it, and I thought the beginning storm sequence, because they're in a storm before they get to Japan, it was good for TV, but I'm like, is this going to hold up? Because I hadn't watched it in a while. As soon as they come on, as soon as they reach landfall, and they walk up on the beach, man, you are locked in. This has lost none of its power. It's funny. Even the great Maurice Jarre does the music. Dun 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 dun. It's so good. The score is so good, even though he doesn't have like a full orchestra because they had to do it on the cheap. But between this and the Winds of War, I mean, come on. I love Shogun because really, Shogun is like, in a way, it's like a great science fiction story too. First of all, I've always been fascinated by Japan. I've always loved Japanese girls, so what's not to like about Yoko Shimada? But I've loved Japanese culture. I grew up watching samurai movies, and to see the Tokugawa shogunate and go back to 17th century feudal Japan and seeing how, like, there are priests, there are people from the West that have come there, and seeing the society. What's also really interesting about Shogun that to this day resonates, it's not really subtitled. So you, like the John Blackthorne character, kind of learn a little bit of Japanese, as you watch along, and it's fascinating. It's so good. I mean, for those of you who've never seen Shogun, do yourself a favor. I mean, it's a day. Get up, make yourself some breakfast, pour yourself some coffee. I think it's like 12 hours or something. Maybe it's 10 hours. And just get up one day and watch the whole thing, beginning to end. It's so good. It's one of my favorite things that's ever been on TV. And I love it so much. And thanks for bringing it up. This letter comes from Desmond Harris. Desmond Harris says, Hi, Toy Man. Hi, Toy Man. I wanted to ask your perspective on several topics which you seem very well suited to discuss. Number 1, industry topic. Due to the current shutdown on wide movie productions, what's your thoughts on studios releasing... Oh, you know what? I read this already. Well, maybe not. I don't know if I did all of this. What's your thoughts on studios releasing shelved or unreleased movies online, especially if editing is required like what you do, thus allowing parts of the industry to tick along? Your thoughts, please. Maybe I didn't read this. Well, first of all, there's not a lot of unreleased material sitting on studio shelves or things that needed to. There just isn't, because they all get thrown out somewhere. There's a lot of TV pilots that get made, like the first part of a series that gets made that they don't get picked up. And there's a lot of those, like Global Frequency being one, John Woo's Lost in Space pilot, Roadside Picnic that's based on the Arkady and Boris Strugatsky novel, things like that. But there's not a lot of movies sitting around. What I would like to see, I mean, look, would I like to see the Snyder cut of Justice League? Sure. Should they spend $30 million to, why not? You know, they could put editors to work together and they could do something like that. That I would like to see. Which could be cool. But yeah. Number 2, industry topic. Massively overinflated movie budgets are likely to be cut back due to studio debt due to the coronavirus situation and the display of studios like Blumhouse creating movies on way more efficient budgets. Your thoughts? Look, I have always thought that you don't need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to make films. You know, you go back, and even though it's 20 years ago, The Matrix was a $65 million movie. I mean, movies have gotten more expensive. I think being forced to use less is always something that can be beneficial. The fact that a movie like The Invisible Man can make over $100 million worldwide on a $7 million spend is good business. And I think that studios should be releasing more movies like this in theaters, but it's hard. Ultimately, you always have the same problem, making a good movie. And having read screenplays for a number of years for a living, I can tell you that I would say that 99, like for every 100 scripts I would read, 1 or 2 of them would be good. That's the ratio. It's dire. So finding great scripts to turn into films is really hard. It's really hard, whether they're low-budget movies. And what's funny is when I was growing up, most of the movies I went to see, most of my genre favorites, when I was really going to movies as a teenager, starting out, 12 years old was when I really got into going to movies that I'd go to by myself or whatever. You think about movies that were in theaters, they were low-budget movies. John Carpenter movies, The Fog, Escape from New York, a couple $1 million. Escape from New York was like $4 million. And I don't know if people can make the business has just changed, so I don't know. I mean, studios. Look, I thought when we were making The Hills Run Red for Warner Premiere, their direct-to-video division, Warner Premiere and Joel Silver's Dark Castle were going to make 10 movies around like the $4 to $5 to $6 million range. 10. They made 2. They made Return to House on Haunted Hill, which was based on the House on Haunted Hill, because what they wanted to do was exploit their library and make sequels to previously made. That's why we got 2 sequels to The Lost Boys. The Lost Boys, The Tribe. They were going to make direct-to-video sequels because they knew they wouldn't put them out theatrically, but they knew for $4 to $6 million they could make a nice sizable return by selling them on home video. So they were going to make 10 movies. And they only made 2, and they were in pre-production on the third one, and they just killed they pulled the plug. And they figured, well, why? What's the point? Why use these resources and only make couple of $1 million profit. And so give new filmmakers a chance, develop careers. The studios, I think, should be doing more like that and Blumhouse is kind of doing that thing. They'll make movies for $5 million. Some of them work, some of them don't, but they'll put them out streaming if they don't. If they're really good, they'll release them theatrically. M. Night Shyamalan got to come back. He made The Visit. Then he made Split. Then he made Glass. He kept those budgets down, and look at what they've done. I mean, I think that they should make low budget. I think the studios, by moving away and only making these giant, with streaming now, we're going to see a lot more of these movies made, by the way. But I think you're right. More efficient budgets, tighter ships, have people that know what they're doing. Why not? The Picard show. Was it only me who found it odd when all the Borg drones were sucked into space? Why would Borg drones not be beamed back onto the cube? Considering Borg have shown historically to do with they can stand tough climates and frozen in ice and still being able to survive, the Borg hardly seem easily removed like that, and it was a weak way to remove a potential threat. Your thoughts? It's completely stupid. Let's eject the Borg into space. Well, why? If 7 of 9 flew that Borg cube to Coppelius, why wouldn't she first go collect all the Borg drones that were blasted into space? Wouldn't that be the first thing? Maybe she did, by the way. We haven't just seen that yet. But yes, we've seen Borg walk around on the outside of the Enterprise. We've seen Borg frozen for a long time in the Arctic ice. I mean, yeah, go get them back. It was another stupid thing because, another stupid thing in Picard that doesn't make any sense. Picard show. What's with the over-the-top, non-believable acting from the Sutra character portraying like she's in an Italian fashion show? The very odd incest vibe with the female Romulan villain and her brother. Is it just me seeing this? These things keep cropping up more and more, making me not buy into the story, and I just stick around hoping something decent would occur with the story and not random action scenes that make no sense to me. Example, space orchids pulling space fighting ships to the planet? Why not find a way to send the space fight away from the planet and then send up space orchids? Dude, I don't know. As you know, I've been talking about space orchids. I still don't understand. I really don't get it. Have no idea. A comic topic. Any chance you would cover comic character Jonah Hex from All-Star Western Comics with his adventures? I've always liked Jonah Hex. I also liked the Keith Giffen Jonah Hex when he went into the future. But, I don't know. I mean, maybe. I like Jonah Hex. I don't know a lot about the character. I could delve into it. Not a bad idea. Desmond, all these good ideas. Thank you for sharing these topics. And you finally end by saying, thanks for your thought-provoking show. Well, I certainly appreciate that you think so. That's a good thing. Let's see. Let me go back to this because you guys have been sending in. Sean Pullen sends in a super chat and says, the thing about you, Rob, is I keep challenging you, and you don't get angry or call me a shill. It seems like a small thing, but it's actually rare and appreciated. Bless your heart. Sean, I look forward to your letters. Why would I? I mean, look, I have no problem being challenged for my ideas. Look, as I've always said, I like other people's points of view. I'm obviously, one time I said this before, but I heard from somebody a long time ago that you should never think that you know something, that you know everything about a topic. Because if you know everything about a topic, then you stop thinking about that topic and you stop reassessing your beliefs. I think beliefs about things should always be reassessed. Look, you're never going to get me. I think the points that you make with Picard are valid, but I think you are, as a lot of people do, a lot of the people that argue or talk to me about new Star Trek are seeing snippets of things in the episodes, and then they're basing their entire opinions based on these snippets as things that they can latch onto because they want to like it so much. Look, I want to like Picard as well, but to me, every episode is full of all of this conflicting stuff. So while there might be a snippet of something here and there, I still don't understand why would they introduce the character of Bruce Maddox and kill him. I don't get it. Why was he why even look for him at all? And why was he on the take? Why did he need to borrow money from a crime boss to continue his research if he was on his secret planet and he seemed to have all the resources? I mean, if he's on a planet that they can build a space-faring space orchid flower defense system, why was he borrowing money, and why was he in with space criminals? Why? And because of the admonition, why did Girardi have to kill him? I mean, none of that makes a lick of sense to me. Just because Girardi saw that there was this thing, I mean, she of all people would think, well, I still don't understand. Why would you kill him? How does killing him affect anything? He's already built these androids that are apparently the danger. So why would killing him, wouldn't keeping him around? It just, none of it makes any sense. And remember, the first half of this show was about going to find Bruce Maddox and going to get Elnor. I can't, after you've let me down there, all of this other stuff is just compounding the gobbledygook ridiculousness I feel about this entire show. And I would never criticize you for calling in, and you make very good points. There's nothing you've said. You're not like, well, I like this, so no. Everything that you've sent me is well reasoned and well stated and interesting, and it's thought provoking. But I still think that while you're addressing things that I don't disagree with, overall there's so much that you haven't addressed that I just think is ridiculous. Like, literally, the Bruce Maddox character should have been a character that carried through to the end of this show. You literally went and got him, and then you killed him, which makes the entire quest to get him, he didn't even share any information about any of this with our characters. So what was the point? What was the point? I don't know. Crosstalk sends in a tip and says, I read somewhere that a studio optioned a remake of Last Starfighter. I read that too. Although Ernie Klein apparently already has the go-ahead on Armada, which is a soft copy of Last Starfighter and Ender's Game, I'd rather see it as a show. Your thoughts? Look, I don't know if we need the Last Starfighter remade. I mean, it's kind of cool, but I don't know. I mean, Armada was not the book was not as good as Ready Player One, and I don't worship the altar of Ernie Klein. You know, he's a fan. I really appreciate what he did, and I much preferred books like, well, Snow Crash. To me, that's what I want to see made. But you know, I guess as a show might be better. But I don't know. I'd rather see something new rather than a Last Starfighter. A Last Starfighter was great, but do we need that? Unless, again, if somebody has a really interesting take on the Last Starfighter that is significantly different. When I say interesting take, the difference between the original Fly and Cronenberg's The Fly. That's what I would like to see. Or the original The Thing and Carpenter's The Thing. That's what I would like to see. Dan V sends in a tip and says, there's one way to make the New Warriors work, and that is to kill off the new team in the first issue, like the famous X-Force run that became Ecstatics. I love that. It looks like it's trying way too hard, and the Children of the Atom with the sidekicks looks rough. Again, I was talking about that earlier in this stream. I mean, creating characters named Snowflake and Safe Space. First of all, I don't even... The whole idea of a safe space for people is, I think, wrong in the first place, especially in college. I watched a video today, just a quick video because it was quick, where these guys from Prager University, which is obviously a conservative group, Prager himself, and they were on a college campus and they were asking people just interview questions, and somebody called the police, campus security, on them, saying that they were terrorizing and harassing students, and the cops came. And they're like, okay, so what are they doing? Well, they're asking people questions, and we don't like their point of view. And the cop's like, yeah, but your point of view is that you don't like them, and that's your point of view. It was great. But the idea of I can't believe that these new warrior characters, and I like the new warriors, and the new warriors. Look what happened. They started the Civil War in the Marvel Cinematic Universe when things on their reality show went tits up, and that was not good. It was bad when it went pear-shaped and foobar. Somebody's probably going to get mad that I said tits up, so I apologize to anybody who might have been offended by that terminology. But I'll tell you, that just means somebody's lying on their back dead. That's how I always took that expression. But yes, I think you're right. I would kill off that new team. That I find that even more offensive than, I understand they were trying to not be offensive, but man, that's what you're reducing things to. It's just so pandering, and it seems bad. Even if Alan Moore wrote those characters, even then, I don't know how interested I would be. So you might be right, Dan. I hope we don't ever see it, to be honest. But we're going to. It comes out in April, right? So the books are already printed, probably. Journey's End sent in a super chat and says, did you see Jason Blum did an hour-long interview on the Ben Shapiro show? I heard that. I really want to watch it. Just started listening, but they do a good job addressing the polarization of politics and how it affects entertainment. You know, I am not a Ben Shapiro hater. I've actually listened to and watched a lot of his speeches and things. Again, I like listening to a lot of conservative pundits, so I'll listen to Ben Shapiro's show, and I do listen to his takes on entertainment, and I saw that he just did an hour-long interview with Jason Blum, and I will absolutely watch that. Somebody tweeted it to me earlier today. So, yeah, I will do that. And thank you for bringing that up. And thanks for the super chat. Thanks for supporting the channel. Much appreciated. 200 Watt Studio sends in a super chat and says, purge Borg into space? Why didn't they do that before? Who knows? It wouldn't have worked. We saw in Star Trek First Contact, Borg can survive. We saw in Enterprise, Borg can survive the elements. I mean, I don't think that that would have helped. Dan sends in another tip and says, the new Warriors copying X-Force wouldn't be as creative, but it would work. Children of the Atom with the sidekicks doesn't look like it fits tonally into Hickman's run. I have a difficult time seeing him reference them. It isn't exactly Young Avengers. Yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. I don't know, man. After being so excited about the new X-Men and where they were going, we'll see where all of this is going to go. I don't know. Will they ever publish comics again? Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, here's a tip for some dog food. We don't want Gilbert and Tallulah to eat your books, movies, and cables. Yeah, they get pretty dangerous. I haven't been letting them in here because I have a lot of cables and things out. But they've been doing all right. We got them their new gourmet, well, not new, but their gourmet dog food. We changed it up a little, and they seem to really like it. So that's always a good thing. Let's see. I have another letter, and this is from Owen Toohey. This letter comes from Owen Toohey. Tuohy. Owen, are you related to Angela Toohey from Chehalis, Washington? If you are, say hello. She probably won't remember me. Just say Flying Horseshoe Ranch. She'll know. Owen Toohey says, greetings, Rob. I was wondering if you've ever seen the movie Mirror Mask. I have. Directed by Dave McKean. Most will know Dave McKean from his amazing Sandman covers and his unique artistic style. It's fully rendered in every frame of the film. It was also produced by the Jim Henson Company, and while the film may not use puppets, the fairy tale story world is reminiscent of both Labyrinth and Dark Crystal. Sandman collaborator Neil Gaiman also wrote the script, which is not surprising since the story is very much a live-action adaptation of Coraline, the story following a young girl who finds herself trapped in a fantasy world ruled by a white queen, an evil parallel of her real-life mother. Sound familiar? It does. The movie itself may not be as good as Coraline, but as a fan of both of these Sandman collaborators, I was thoroughly captivated by its imaginative use of visual effects, cool mise-en-scène, and creative story. Surely this underrated gem has not passed you by. It has not. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it. It's beautifully made, and I actually have the DVD. I don't know if it's on Blu-ray, but I do have the DVD right over there, as a matter of fact. And I do like the movie. And it doesn't nearly. No one. I will watch anything Neil Gaiman does. Anything he's involved with, I've watched. I love Neil Gaiman. I've met Neil Gaiman. I've been on panels with Neil Gaiman. I love the guy, and I love his work. It's so in my wheelhouse. So, Owen, thank you very, very much for bringing that up. Mirror Mask, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody should check it out. Let's see this next letter. Actually, I don't know. Let's see. Look who I got a letter from Dieter Bastian from Deutschland. It's shiny, right, Dieter? No, you're never gonna get me to buy off on what do you think of Picard, Dieter? Come on, bro. He loves his Discovery. As everyone knows, Dieter Bastian, longtime member of the Post-Geek Singularity community. He is a terrific guy. He sent one of the first videos to the channel, and I'm a big fan of his. Greetings, Rob. Dieter here. Let the 4-week lockdown commence. Since Germany is in total control of COVID-19, I asked myself what to do. Hey, why not write a letter to RMB? So here we go. I always tell you to stop instigating a Star Trek Twitter war and complain that almost every show drifts at some point into bashing the new show of your most beloved franchise. And now here I stand, or better, type a letter about Star Trek Picard Episode 9. What hypocrisy. Well, let's start at the beginning, and that little space fight between the La Sirena and the Romulan spy. There goes Rob's verisimilitude, I thought, only 2 minutes into the new episode. We complain about Picard being almost a side character in his own show, so actually his seating place in Rios' ship reflects that perfectly well. He strangely looks like someone who has never been to space before. I was trying to avoid your Thursday show because I have to wait a day for the new episode to be available on Amazon Prime. And I want to go in blind, of course. But since I need my daily shot of RMB, I started to listen to it anyway, and I was confused by your mentioning of space orchids. What is Rob talking about? And there they were, a day later, in all of their glory. Have you started planting some space orchid seeds in your garden, Rob? So you don't have to shout, "Get off my lawn" every day, and you could have your own defense system around your house. Oh, wait, you already have the Hounds of Hell doing a pretty good barking job to almost anything or nothing. But you should have at least one in the Robservatory now. It's canon, I guess. On with the episode. Since I considered the Borg cube not fully operational and only good enough for space traveling, I let the orchids taking the structure down slide. But you know how my brain works if you give me shiny stuff. Shiny. I do know, Dieter. And Rob, don't be so jealous just because Soji got the luxury junior suite on the Borg Cube Hotel California. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. Now I get why you can't stop watching. Back into Coppelius. When Raffi gave Soji the phaser, I knew what Rob was thinking. Cool, let's go murder some people. Then comes the great reunion with Space Legolas and Picard. Is so proud of him. Rob, since you're a way smarter cookie than I am, you have to answer me the question of why? Because of Elnor's great story arc in this season, or that he hasn't beheaded anyone else? I'm not sure. Why is Picard so proud of Elnor? Well, you know what? When you're fighting for weeks on end in the same corridor with no bathroom breaks and no food, I'd be proud of Space Legolas too. But at least it was in line with everyone being bummed out almost to tears about Picard's physical condition. I understand Raffi, but all the other ones seem weird since we're not in season 4 or 5 with this crew. Off we go to the Off we go to the nice synth resort. I didn't realize it at first, when they had that little briefing about what's what, that Picard was not with them. Then came the strange edit, and he was sitting all alone. Who edits this show? Robert Meyer Burnett? Certainly not. But Kama Sutra comes along, and my brain luckily wanders off again. Nice! Androids can mind meld, too. That'll send Rob over the edge. Can't wait for him to talk about that event. I guess you will have nice things to say about that one. I should probably lower the volume ahead of watching the Thursday show of Robservations. So, Rob, please help me to understand correctly. The Romulans are pissed off because they don't live eternally, but the synths do? Well, that would bum me out and also send me on a killing spree against such injustice. You always say the show gives you a lot of questions, but then came the moment which answered almost all of them. Perhaps it breezed by too quickly. What is this? Well, it fixes things. How? Just use your imagination. That was, of course, the tool that Rafi was given to fix her ship. Just use your... It fixes things. Just use your imagination. There you go, Rob. All questions answered. Writing at its finest. I believe the critical drinker would call that a bullshit device. Well, to come back full circle to the beginning of the letter and the COVID-19 problem. No Rafi, no hugging Picard. Stay away. Have you learned nothing? Go repair stuff with your imagination device. I'm going to be buying Star Trek Picard on Blu-ray down the road. Oh, wait. No, pardon me. Let me read that again. Buying Star Trek Picard on Blu-ray down the road? Hard pass, Rob. Even Picard is not shiny enough for me. Considering the understandable resolution drop for streaming services for the unforeseeable future, I couldn't be happier about owning physical media. So, Rob, what about giving the big boom bang blue disc a chance and confirming that it comes with English subtitles? It can't be worse than Picard. In the words of D. Snyder, you can't stop rock and roll, Rob, but I guess I have to accept it that you're not in the SMF club. Nevertheless, best regards from Deutschland. Dieter. Well, Dieter, Picard might not be shiny, but your letter is, and it is very much appreciated, my friend. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say about all of that, but yeah, it's pretty rough. Pretty rough out there, ladies and gentlemen. I just don't know what to say about Star Trek Picard. Also, I'm like, they're going to end this in 45 minutes or an hour. What would really be cool, what I would really love, is apparently if this multi-galaxy spanning... I mean, it's now Star Trek canon that there's a multi-galaxy spanning synth civilization that destroys all organic life on a galactic scale. This is now canon. That's a little scary. Why didn't the Q mention that? That seems a little like talking about your big bad. And if these synths are going to summon, I still don't buy. I mean, there wasn't any real synth uprising. The synths weren't really upset. The Romulans started it all. Maybe as Sean said, Picard's just going to talk them all to death. You know, maybe that's what's going to happen. He'll give a good speech and all will be forgiven. I don't know. I just want to know if Elnor is going to get back home to his folks, to his peeps, to his ladies. I don't know. It's kind of a bummer. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that brings me to an end for this Sunday's episode of Robservations, the show about something, episode number 369. My God. I'm working on this video that I hope to have up a little later, which I will wait a minute. Oh, Richard Ford sends in a super chat and says, thanks to Germany for those few minutes of comedy. Yes, I appreciate Dieter writing. I always love it when Dieter writes. It's very great. Stubble McShave sends in a tip. It says, I think bookstores will be hit as bad as comic book stores and they'll be more difficult to relaunch. I agree with you. Comic book stores have a clientele that are more likely to hang out at comic book stores as a congregation point. Book purchasing will probably move 100% online. You know, I think that's kind of a bummer because I like browsing at bookstores, but you might be correct. I don't know, man. I just think all of the businesses, we shut down everything. Look, if we had testing, we don't have any tests. You know, when you test people that aren't infected and they're not they don't have the disease, and then you start taking temperatures, and you quarantine the people that do. But we don't have the tests, so we don't know where anything is, and we're seeing these numbers jump every single day, and it's just going to get worse. But we have to turn our economy back on. I mean, that's the thing that I don't see a whole lot of leadership at the federal level explaining what is it we're going to do to turn the economy on. Restaurants that have takeout and grocery stores are going to be the only places left. How are they going to even turn the economy back on in a month or two? I mean, I guess they're going to have to. But what I don't know, man. I don't know. I hope that a lot of these, I mean, what's interesting is you realize very quickly what is really essential to your life and what isn't. I'm lucky I'm surrounded by all of this stuff. I mean, I have all this stuff here. And I can stay amused, but at the end of the day, I still like people. I like going out and doing things. I like seeing movies. Everybody I think's going a little stir crazy. Dan V sends in a tip and says, I'm not the first one to bring it up, but I still find it funny that people were so concerned about Tarantino doing a Star Trek movie with the swearing and violence, but Picard did it on its own. It's really disappointing with the nonsensical plot. Well, Dan, I couldn't agree with you more. It gives me no pleasure to not love Star Trek. I don't like that. I don't like to not love Star Trek, and I guess I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I know, knowing what goes into making movies and things like that, I don't. It just feels like these scripts are kind of gang-banged together. You've got 5 people throwing in ideas, and then somebody writes them all up, and then they forget I still don't understand why Bruce Maddox was a part of this show. They introduce him and then kill him off. I mean, he should have been the driving philosophy behind. I mean, ultimately, if that was the reveal that, Alden and Iago or whatever, Alden and Iago and whatever, Sung, who's got to be Lore. If he's not Lore, then it's like, you just added another offspring. Nooney and they didn't deal with Nooney and Sung enough, so you're just going to make up. That's what I really hate about all of these shows is they just make up these siblings and people, and I feel like, why do you have to do that? Why not create brand new characters that are characters unto themselves? Why do you have to make another daughter for Sarek? Why? Why does that have to be the case? Why do you have to retcon Spock? Why? Why not create your own new characters that are uniquely yours? It's such a strange, weird way to go, but I don't know what to say. I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't know. I really don't. So, well, anybody. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to bring an end to Robservations episode number 369. I want to thank you all for being here. All of you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. I want to thank you for supporting me, for supporting the channel, for supporting whatever you're supporting during this difficult time. It means a lot to everybody who's out there trying to, make a living, stay above water, stay afloat. And thank you all for being here, and I very much appreciate all the letters you are sending in. Remember, tomorrow, I'm not only going to be on the John Campea show, I would imagine. I'll be doing this show, and I will also be doing episode 5 of Whining About Movies with Elizabeth, and our movie is Jean-Jacques Benet's Betty Blue, his third feature film after Diva and Moon in the Gutter. I love Betty Blue. It's I guess you'd call it a tragic romance. And it has been recently released on Blu-ray by Criterion. I don't know if the Richard will be having a watch party, but you can go to the Facebook page and you can find the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page, or you can go to the Elizaviews Whining About Movies Facebook page and leave your comments. And I don't know if the Richard he's probably like, Betty Blue, how can I find it? I don't know. I don't know if it's online. I don't know if it's streaming, but it is the movie for tomorrow. Jean-Jacques Benet's Betty Blue. It's a favorite of mine. Terrific film. So I guess I'll be on the internet 3 times tomorrow. So look out for that. I want to thank my moderating staff. First of all, the mayor of Riverdale, Iowa, Mike Bodden, who is making sure that I'm getting letters forwarded to me, even though he's been dealing with absolute craziness. I want to thank my moderating staff made up of Detective Jim Boyers, Greg Smith, Louis Yu, and Jordy Lyons. They do such a great job, and it makes the community here so great. But most of all, I want to thank you members of the Post-Geek Singularity, for making these shows so much fun to do. You can always send me letters at right there. Robservations at Burnettwork.net. And more than ever, I want to know what you're thinking about. What's on your mind? How you guys feeling? What are you thinking about? What are you watching? Are you binging anything? Like Stubble McShave, I think you should all watch Shogun, because Shogun is great. And ladies and gentlemen, with that, I bring an end to Robservations episode number 369. And remember, every person you meet, although hopefully you're not meeting people because you're saying socially distance, but when you can meet people, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say thank you for being with me. And as always, I'd like to say, and in these times more than ever, have a better day.